What's going on, my creatures of the night? Welcome to this week's edition of Throwback Tuesdays. Today we're talking about bad albums by good bands. I'm not going to waste your time any further. We're going to go ahead and jump into things here. We're going to start with number 8, Guns N' Roses' The Spaghetti Incident. Oh boy. Now, first of all, I'll say that Guns N' Roses has never been my cup of tea. I've always considered them to be an overrated, overhyped, generic 80s mom rock band, but that's just my own opinion. They did, however, leave their landmark in the world of rock and metal with their Appetite for Destruction album in the 1980s. However, the Spaghetti Incident is nowhere near as good as Appetite for Destruction. And Appetite for Destruction isn't the greatest album out there, so the Spaghetti Incident is pretty freaking bad. I mean, first of all, couldn't they write their own songs? I mean, we all know they're 100% capable of writing their own material, and when they did, it wasn't that bad. But, oh man. This album is so bad that you don't even have to listen to its entirety to know how awful and atrocious it sounds. You can really tell by, around the time this album came out, you can really tell that Guns N' Roses were beginning to lose their relevance. And while we're at it, let's throw in Chinese Democracy, which is just Axl holding on to his fame, being a douchebag, and the original lineup didn't care for it. Chinese Democracy is just a demonstration of the new Guns N' Roses being a shell of what Guns N' Roses once was. Anyways, moving on, but not to the light. Oh boy, number 7, Megadeth with Super Collider. Oh, dear God. You know, I am so glad Dystopia was a good album, because back in 2013 when Megadeth released this album, I was disgusted. This album had nowhere near the amount of greatness that their classics such as Peace Sells, Rust in Peace, and Countdown to Extinction has. This album approached a more generic pop rock vibe, which just isn't Megadeth at all. The album itself sounds nothing like Megadeth. As a matter of fact, it sounds fucking awful. I mean, Mustaine's vocals are horrible on the album, and the instrumentation really doesn't deliver anything special to the table. I lost hope for Megadeth when this album came out. Do I dare mention that Risk album as well? Oh, jeez. Left a sour taste in my mouth. But Dystopia really made up for that mess of an album. Thank the Lord. Number 6 would be... Let's see. Number 6 would have to be Dark Throne with the Underground Resistance. Oh, boy. Oh, Dark Throne, one of the greatest black metal bands of all time, with classic albums such as A Blaze in the Northern Sky, Transylvanian Hunger, and Total Death. I mean, they're iconic. But you listen to the Underground Resistance, and you actually have to stop and think for a few minutes. Did I play the wrong album? Was that really Dark Throne, or maybe they put the wrong CD in the case? You then look at the CD and realize that it is indeed Dark Throne, and you ask yourself, what the fuck you just listened to? I can't even call it black metal. It sounds like 80s hair metal, which wasn't even relevant when this album came out. Oh boy, this album was a mess. I don't know what Dark Throne was going through. I don't know what told them to make an album like this, but sweet Jesus, what the hell were they thinking when they made this album? You're probably wondering the same thing. Don't believe me? Go and listen to it. Speaking of disasters, let's talk about Illud Divinium Insanus at number 5 by Morbid Angel. One of the greatest death metal bands of all time with their iconic album Altars of Madness. You've heard me praise Altar of Madness many times. If you haven't, you can watch those videos as well. One of the greatest death metal bands of all time decide to release this abomination after years of being away. We were so excited to hear the album, and then we heard it, and it was a major slap to our faces. It was like a middle finger to all of us. This album was just awful. It was like I heard a garbage truck pass by my house the other day, and I swear it sounded a lot like this album. You know, we've all heard the jokes, but speaking of garbage, let's talk about number 4, Dedicated to Chaos by Queensryche. Oh boy. That left a sour taste in my mouth as well. I posted a review on this album, so I don't want to have to go too far in depth on it. Man, what happened to Jeff Tate? He went from the masterpiece that was Operation Mindcrime to this atrocity that actually caused the band to split up. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I want to talk about Dedicated to Chaos. This album is pure chaos. Okay. Number 3. Number 3 is Virtual 11 by... Number 3... Sorry, just the thought of that album makes me sick. Number 3 is Virtual 11 by Iron Maiden. Whoa, whoa, man. 1998 was a bad year for metal, man. Bruce Dickinson left Iron Maiden for some time in the early 90s, and Iron Maiden had Blaze Bayley on vocals. Not knocking him as a vocalist, but man, this album is not Iron Maiden. This album is a shell of what Iron Maiden was in the 80s. Oh, Jesus, do the songs sound bad. Listen to it yourself if you don't believe me. Sweet Jesus. I am so glad Bruce Dickinson came back after this bombshell of an album. Walked into a public bathroom and saw something that reminded me of this album, but, yeah. Number 2 is Van Halen III by, you guessed it, Van Halen. Once again, 1998, horrible year for rock and metal. You know, there's so many other albums I could talk about by good bands that came out around this time period, the late 90s, but I don't have all day, so... But yeah, by 1998, Van Halen was no longer relevant, and they hadn't been relevant for a long time. They really didn't have that excitement or rock and roll that they had back in the 80s when they were trying to bring some fun back into rock and roll. And all the teenagers were enjoying it, and it was good stuff in the 80s. But then you listen to this, and it sounds more like generic, crappy commercial music. Honestly, but Van Halen kind of sold out and lost their touch by this time, as hair metal / glam metal wasn't relevant for quite a long time, and most of the other hair metal and glam metal bands evolved and shifted to other things. This band, not so much. And number 1. Number 1. Oh boy. Oh god. Oh god. Oh god. Don't make me. Don't. Oh god. Number 1 is Living Things by Linkin Park. Dear God, what the hell happened to Linkin Park, man? Hybrid Theory was such a good album. I mean, it wasn't my cup of tea, but it was a good damn album. They shook up the rock and new metal scene in the early 2000s, and then this album comes out, and what do I hear? I hear generic pop / electronic bullshit. No, do not listen to this album. If anything, burn every single copy you can find of it. It's horrid. Like, how did Linkin Park go from this badass new metal to angry, whiny, emo, butthurt electronic pop hipsters? Dear God. You have to think, what really was going on in their minds when they were making this album? Seriously. Let's throw in Minutes to Midnight, too. That was god-awful. It wasn't as bad as this album, but it was pretty freaking bad. But yeah, that's enough. That's enough of these abominations. This has been Throwback Tuesday, episode 3. Thank you guys for watching, and rock on.